Hello, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So good to see you all. Hello. Veronica, I love seeing you dance every time. That just makes my heart smile big, girl. And the music is always so fun. Oh my gosh, so good to see all of your beautiful faces. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We have made it to Module 3 already. How are things going for you? We did some homework last week, and I'm curious to know how that's all going for you. We'll have homework for you for this week, but we'll talk about that at the end. Oh my gosh, hello everybody. Gosh, oh my gosh, I feel like we have pretty much, we're covering, Arlene is in Hawaii. Hello, Arlene. And Trina's in Madison, Wisconsin. Kelly is in BC, Canada. Hello, our Canada doula givers. So excited that you're here. Minnesota, Boston. Oh, it looks like it's raining in Philadelphia. It's raining here in Boise too. Grateful for the rain. It makes the flowers so happy. Boston, Wisconsin. I love Milwaukee, Oregon. Oh, it sounds like Texas is hot today. Virginia, Cape Cod, Arizona. We are covering all across the country here. Oh my gosh, Maryland, Maine, Miami. Oh my gosh, Massachusetts. Hello, you guys. Oh, it's so good. California. Oh, everywhere. This is so exciting. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you guys all so much for joining. We have something I'm so excited to share with you. I'll give you a little exciting news, but we're going to save it until afterwards. But I am excited to share something, but we'll share it at the end. So stay tuned. But I do want to just invite you to just make sure that you're nice and cozy. We're going to be talking about the transition phase, and it can be a bit heavy because some folks may have already supported their loved ones during this time, during the transition phase, and really, I was listening to the training earlier today. I'm really glad that Suzanne and Doula Givers has really offered this top-notch education about really how we can prepare someone and then really help support people during all phases. We talked about in module 1 the shock phase. Module 2 was that stabilization phase where all of the magic can happen. And then also we are going to be talking about the transition phase where people actually can go from their stabilization phase right into the transition phase pretty quickly. And so Suzanne is going to be talking to us about how we can step into that space to really be able to educate and support our families, our family caregivers, and help you to prepare you to be the best doula giver possible. So this is just a beautiful training. I know I say this every time, but this is one of my favorites because it really helped me to better understand the process and help me to prepare to just remind our families and our loved ones that this is a natural part of the end of life experience. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and get started. We will have a Q&A afterwards, about 30 minutes. And I just want to remind you, we're going to go ahead and quiet the chat now. Thank you for all the love. Thank you for everybody chiming in. I'm so glad that you were here. I just see all the excitement. I love being here with you guys. You have no idea how exciting it is to just share this journey with you. So we're going to go ahead and quiet the chat now, and then when we're done, we'll go into the Q&A and just we'll be sure and have you ask either hashtag question, or we'll have you guys pop online and be able to ask some questions live. So again, I've been practicing, so we're going to go ahead and screen share, and we're going to go ahead and get started. And Veronica, since I see you on my screen, can you give me a thumbs up? Can you see the screen? Perfect. Okay, I'm going to start playing it, and then I'm going to ask you to give me a thumbs up as well to make sure that you hear it. It'll be just a couple moments, and then I'll make it larger.
Hi, everyone, and
Can you
welcome
hear
to
it?
Doula Giver's Certified End-of-Life Doula
Perfect.
Training. My name is Suzanne O'Brien. Thank you so much for being here. Today, we are going to do the transition phase, and the transition phase is one of the most stressful times in the end-of-life experience. As you can probably tell, there are the different phases with, sometimes that different intensity and what you need to do to support someone within that phase. So now we're at the transition phase, and this is, again, the period of time right before somebody has an end of life experience. So it's the transition from this world to the next, whatever your belief system is, but we're going to go through the actual process of what that looks like for everyone. So again, I want to welcome you to Doula Giver's Certified End of Life Doula Training. This is the certification course. So we are at level 1, week 3, the third module, and we're going to begin on transition phase. Transition phase is going to be taught to you in 2 sections. So it's going to be today, and it's going to be your next module. So this is the beginning of it. So let's start with what that is. So what is the transition phase? The transition period is the time right before a person dies. It's the transition from this world to the next. This period can last anywhere from hours to days. So it's, again, very important to understand as much as you can about this stressful period of time, a period where it's happening. And I often make that connection with the birthing of the baby. As we call ourselves doula givers, the word doula is a Greek word that means non-medical person who gives physical, emotional, and spiritual support to someone else. And just like those little babies, they don't know what time it is. You cannot, unless you're doing a cesarean section, you cannot determine the time that that baby's going to arrive and how that really is going to all look. The very same set of conditions is for end of life. We don't know exactly when that's going to happen. It's going to happen. You can't stop it from happening. So the best thing we can do is be as prepared as possible. So again, it's the period of time right before someone dies. So when we talk about people going into a transition phase, it can usually evoke that shock kind of feeling again, because if we have had enough time and if we have had the chance to get a stabilization phase, which we talked about is where the magic happens, where all the acute issues are taken care of, and that patient has the highest quality of day every day, and sometimes their quality of their life now is better than it has been in 10, 20, 30 years. So people are really enjoying and having a great time. It did not change the fact that they have an end-of-life process. So when we can see the transition phase coming about, it can kick us back, the family, back into a shock presentation. So I'm going to teach you the importance of always keeping one foot in that reality space of teaching and holding that space that we do have an end-of-life process, that it can go well, and kind of doing little teaching throughout the stabilization phase, if you can, so that when we inevitably come to the transition phase, it's not as big as a shock. So this period of time can last anywhere from hours to days in its usual course that it runs. So what can you do as a doula? As a doula, you should be aware of the way that the body physically shuts down. Systematically, we all die the same way. No matter what the disease process somebody has, the body goes through many of the same steps in the very end. Not everyone goes through every step every time. It is best to be familiar, though, with all of the steps and/or stages so you can identify what is happening and suggest interventions for comfort, or simply let the family know that something they are seeing is a natural part of the dying process and not to be afraid. So we're going to go through what those steps and stages look like. And again, not everyone will go through every step every time, but it is best practice for a doula to be aware of them all so that you can let the family know what suggested interventions there are for comfort, or again, simply letting the family know that what they are seeing is a natural part of the end of life process and not to be afraid. This statement alone can be extremely comforting to families. Many people, once again, have never seen somebody at the end of life, so everything is heightened and very evokes a lot of fear. Why is this important? The transition phase may be the most stressful period of care due to the quick changes the body goes through as it starts to shut down. So again, I always think of that labor. It moves very quickly. It can be painful. We can't control the timing of it. And somebody is coming into this world, somebody is leaving this world. So we want to be as prepared as possible. It's during this phase that the patient will go into what is known as a deep sleep as the body eventually dies. So I'm going to tell you the way that a textbook goes, and then I'm going to share some stories that will allow you to know that, there are things that can happen that aren't textbook, and that not everything, of course, is textbook, but this is the way it usually goes. There are several changes to be aware of so that you can offer suggestions for comfort or simply reassure the family that what is happening is a natural part of the dying process. This knowledge alone is very comforting. Okay. The main role of the end-of-life doula in this phase is to obviously be aware of every step and stage. And so what I'm always doing as a doula is I'm always looking for, again, with my eyes, with my ears, with my knowing, with my, what am I getting? What is my intuition telling me? I'm always looking for those subtle changes in a patient's presentation that tells me that they need some form of care plan change during their journey. But for the transition phase, I'm looking for those indications that somebody might be headed into a transition phase. Why? Why am I all over that? Because it's really important. Because once somebody goes into a transition phase, we're not going to be able to ever go backwards. The more prepared families are for the transition phase, the better everyone does. When someone goes into a transition phase and that deep sleep that I talk about, that's it. There's no more conversation. If something hasn't been said, if somebody didn't come, they're not going to be able to have that experience with the loved one at the end. So it's critically important for us to be on top of it. There's also some safety issues that are important here. So we'll talk about what that is. So you're always wanting to be grounded and present on every visit, in every case, asking those 3 questions. Now, I'll just share with you that no matter if you can identify necessarily whatever phase that you're in or not, if you ask those 3 questions, let's just say let's just say that your patient, you've been working with them, they've gotten out of their shock phase, you're in a stabilization phase and it's going well. And that's the goal, to have that beautiful time and quality of life really high. But you go on your visit and you ask those 3 questions to yourself again. Are there any safety issues? Are there any acute issues? What is the support system? And all of a sudden, you notice that your patient is not eating, like she's eating, but she's taking a really long time. And it seems like she's chewing her food like for a really long time. And, you ask her, is she having trouble swallowing? Because that is one of the telltale signs that's happening. And if she says, I have been having a little trouble in the last couple of days, that's one of the first indicators that somebody is possibly heading into their transition phase. It's also a safety issue for choking. So I'm going to show you this, but I also want to really reinforce the 3 questions on every case and every visit and how they will really unfold the way that you need to do a care plan and how you take care of somebody completely, holistically as a doula. So let's talk about the indications that somebody is going to give you that says that they're entering the transition phase. I look for 2 of these. Usually I look for 2 of these indications before I call it to the family. So let's see what they are. So the first thing I talked about, and this is really important, and this is also one of the most challenging, is that they lose the desire to eat and or the ability to swallow. So if you think about that for a minute, one of the things that we equate with, health and getting better and living is food and eating. So if we have somebody who's in a compromised, unhealthy, diseased body and a terminal diagnosis, and they start refusing food or not eating, people panic. And we also know that if somebody stops eating for a period of time, we're going to lose them. They're going to die because they already, are very ill. So families usually start forcing and really getting upset. Now, we really have to be very clear and communicate what is actually happening. What is the truth of what's happening in this natural process of end of life? As hard as it is to lose our loved one, the fact that we don't talk about any of this has done such a disservice and has made end of life 1,000 times more difficult than it needs to be. This is actually one of the most natural parts of an end of life process, and it's not starving somebody. So the first thing that people say when they're panicked is that, she's not eating, we're starving her, she's starving. And they're just riddled with all of these emotions and guilt and anger and all of that. And that's not the truth. So what happens is that the body naturally will shut off the swallowing reflex because it says, I'm not absorbing the nutrients. I don't need the nutrients anymore. And this is how I'm actually naturally going to shut down my body. So it turns that off because it's not taking it in. The danger, again, safety, and this comes up a lot, is that people will try to force feed those at the end of life and actually guilt them into eating, and people end up choking and or aspiration pneumonia, which is food going down into the lungs, and then they'll get pneumonia and die anyway. So we always have to make sure that our families know that that is to be expected. And I think one of the worst things we can do as well is to guilt people and force them to eat when they don't want to. Because, I mean, if you've ever been, somewhere where you're eating more than you're full or you don't want to eat and somebody's forcing you to eat more, it's a terrible, terrible feeling. So this is something we really want to be at the end of life, really, really supportive of the patient and offering small, frequent meals just in the whole journey with them is optimal. Asking them what they'd like. And if they don't want something or refuse a meal, then don't make a big deal out of it. Offer something later. This is, again, that loving, supportive atmosphere that we have to create. And it's very important to remember that the appetite is very different than a body who's using a lot of that energy for fuel and doing work. So small, frequent, soft meals, meaning soft in texture, things that are easy to chew and digest. Somebody might have loved a London broil steak. So the son brings a London broil steak to an end-of-life patient. Bringing a steak can look like climbing a mountain to them. That takes so much energy. So we want to, and it doesn't, you can get creative. And I say, please think outside the box and please be creative with your wonderful people. You can, if somebody loves steak, you can ground that steak up. So if they really love the smell and the taste of it, there are ways to accomplish that without having it be dangerous for actually chewing and choking, but also really just the work involved with a steak. I'm laughing because I think of so many that's happened. It's exhausting. So small, frequent meals, and understanding that what is happening is that the body naturally is saying, I don't need the nutrients, I'm not absorbing the nutrients, so I'm shutting off the swallowing reflex. And people go into, so you've heard of religious fastings. People go into, it's actually a natural painkiller. People go into a electrolyte imbalance that's quite euphoric, and there are like endorphins and things released within that experience. So it's not starving. They don't have those hunger pains like you and I do because our body's saying, give me food. I need to break up that food for work. So you want to share the truth of what's happening with the body and the experience with families in wonderful little sections. And at the end of tonight, we're going to talk about doing an assignment for homework that's going to be part of in the stabilization phase, sharing bits and pieces of what the family can expect towards the end. So while you're in that safety net zone, you can actually talk about this. That one of the first things is that people lose and don't want to eat, and this is why, and it is okay. And what we can do to support that patient. We can offer ice chips, or even like little amounts of sorbet, or the mouth swabs that you dip in a tiny bit of liquid, and they have lemon, they have mint. You always want to make sure that you can brush their teeth with them, brush their tongue, and then lubrication to create that moisture. So things like Biotine, or sometimes hospice will have a little balm that they use that can actually be used on the inside of the mouth, because everything obviously is drying up, and that's a really you can get that yucky kind of parched taste. There are things we can do for comfort. We're going to be constantly taking care of that patient and offering them. So you do want to be able to talk about these things. Again, if you have an opportunity throughout the stabilization phase, this is a great place to be planting these seeds. The second indication is that they become agitated and or restless. Sometimes they talk about having to go home or going on a trip. And I find this so fascinating, and I always have at end of life the connection, because I've been with over 1,000 people at the end of life now, and in different countries. And so the common themes that run through, and and people are, they're in their physical homes, and they're like, I have to go home, I have to go, I have to go, and they know they're going somewhere. And they also talk about going home. And so some of the times people are in that in and out kind of sleeping and not sleeping. So I often think they have one foot in this world and one foot in another world, because that's what's really presenting. But I've had people who have been really clear of mind in this world, so to speak, the whole time, and talk about, I'm going home, and being really at peace with that. In fact, this one woman that I had in the hospital in oncology, it was a very, very challenging case. So she was dying, and she was in her, I guess, late 60s, and it was a very, very challenging death. As far as she was, having so much pain, and they were giving her so much medication, and she was still, which is pretty unusual these days, that you can't take care of managed pain. And she was, still saying, no, it's so high. And she was, kind of crying out, and her husband was beside himself, and all of this was happening. And, one of the largest components and the most difficult areas of end of life that can cause us angst, pain, trauma, all of that, is the emotional component to the end of life experience, to those unresolved issues, to those regrets, to all of that that's there. And it really manifests physical pain, and that's what she was in. And they were just giving her all this medicine, and really high doses, and nothing seemed to be helping. And then I remember because I was checking on her like every hour, and I remember walking in the room, and she was just quiet and peaceful with her eyes closed in her bed, and she said, I'm going home, like with a little smile. And I said, and there's no place like home. And she said, there's no place like home. So somehow she got that message, revelation, that she was going home, and it brought her tremendous peace, and there was no more pain. So it was not a medication that did it. It was a shift, which we'll talk about through the transition phase. Sometimes this, what I call spiritual wisdom, comes through. And thank you that it does, because it's incredibly magical and powerful. So this agitation, so this can be a safety issue, because you might have people who are in that very much sleep place, not a sleep coma, but before that. So they're kind of like sleeping a lot, sleeping more than usual, and now getting closer to being in a sleep state. But they wake up and they're like, I gotta go, I gotta go. And so one of the things that, now there are medications that hospice uses to help with agitation. I subscribe to using medications as my last resort. Okay, so they're great, but also I use them as my last resort because they have side effects, and medications can interact with other medications. And, you know, it's like I always, instead of covering or what you would say masking a symptom. So if somebody has agitation and you give them an anti-anxiety medication, you know, it's masking the symptom. I'm not saying that it's not warranted at times, but I'm saying what if we could get to the root of the agitation? Wouldn't that be better? Because what happens when that medication wears off? I guess you give more of that medication, but again, is that always the best for this person and this whatever's going on, or can we talk about it or give them maybe what they're looking for? So for this agitation, what I have found is that ask them what they need. And sometimes, again, they're saying, well, I have to go, I'm going on a trip. And you say, and sometimes they'll say, I have to pack. You know, of course you would pack to go on a trip. So I say, well, let me help you. What would you like? And so it's great because, again, you're giving them back control. They stay safe. They dictate to you because they don't really have the strength or the wherewithal, and it's not packing for a trip. It's more of a knowing that they're going somewhere. So you will have them direct you. You will pack their bag, you put the bag right next to the bed, let them see it, and they usually just settle down that it's okay, it's right there. I'm good, I'm all packed. So again, trying to work through some of that, and it really has. It's been incredible how that has really calmed people down. Now, please be aware that when people say, I have to go, or I'm going on a trip or going home, they're getting ready to depart. So again, these are those indications, and it can be kind of like a passing through that somebody would say something like that, and my kind of like antenna is up and saying, uh-oh, okay, what's going on? So I look for one of the other indications before I'm going to really call it, what I call it. They start to sleep most of the time. So again, you know, they're getting into that place where it's like, I really feel I've been with people at the bedside where they've been sleeping most of the time, and then they've woken up from their sleep with all this new information. Sometimes a lot of excitement, but like new information about, like, I get it, you know, I know what this was all about, or it just, you know, complete piece of this whole death experience. It's really, really powerful, incredible. So they start sleeping most of the time, and that's an indication. And don't be surprised if they wake up telling you they had quote unquote a dream that was, you know, very interesting and profound, or like this incredible insight, which a lot of them do have, which is really wonderful. They start to talk, or not all of them, but they talk about being visited by loved ones who've already died, or angelic figures. So again, I have worked with people that have been very religious in a very distinct religion all of their lives, practicing, and at the end, they have a newfound perspective, vision, information, and even quote unquote like a little bit of a belief system. And it was fascinating that with all different religions that it would again come to themes that were throughout, which is extremely knowing and powerful. You know, before people die, they become sometimes their true, individual, unique, pure self. And, you know, this is really important because they get this peace and this happiness and this connection of who they truly are, not who, you know, they thought they were or thought what defined them, or and their ego's kind of gone because of they're just their being at this point. And it really happens when like lots of the things that we think define us or make us who we are stripped away, and you become again more of your spiritual presence is forward and unique. And when you've had this experience with loved ones, and anyone who'd like to share if they've had this, anyone you've been with at the end of life and they've been able to have this experience, they've, you know, really become whole. and their light is so bright. And it's before they die. It's quite a beautiful, beautiful thing. It's attainable now while we're here, but we have a lot of work to do to clean up the four bodies of energy that make us, and also doing our own work. But this about seeing loved ones who have passed before them, just imagine if you have somebody who is with a terminal diagnosis and they've seen their mother for the first time in 30 years. I mean, the look on their face, the joy in their heart, the serenity, the excitement, is incredible. The peace that it brings them. So if they've had any fear that has been there, on this journey, when they have this experience, it completely wipes it out. So it is really something to be in the presence of a person who is talking about that. Now, I have been with people who have asked me if I've seen people in the room. I have not seen a person, a figure, or anything of that nature, and you answer them honestly. Am I saying that they're not seeing it? Absolutely not. Who gives me the right? What gives me the right to say that just because I'm not seeing it, that they're not seeing it? And I've had people will say, well, it's medication. I've had people on no medication. It's low oxygen saturation. I've had people with better oxygen saturation than I have. So, you can come up with, and they do try and come up with, all these kind of excuses. And in the hospital, we would be having people hooked up on monitors. Their O2 saturations were going the entire time, being monitored every step of the way of their end of life. So there's no validity in that being the case. And oftentimes, people talk about that this is, again, people coming to help cross them over or wherever they're going. So I'm just sharing with you. I'm not trying to convince you of believing something one way or not. I'm sharing with you what will really take place when you start working in this space, so that you, again, can be the best practitioner that you can possibly be. However, I will say that, doing this so very long, I have then went and studied the quantum physics, the science behind what I've seen at the bedside. And there is science to it. There are facts. It's called quantum physics. It's called energy. It's the matter. It is so exciting. And we'll get back into that a bit in the third level that you're going to have. I have a section called When Science Meets the Bedside, just exactly about this. So this is a common phenomenon, and what you want to do is know that this is going to be part of your experience when you're working in end of life as a doula. And you want to really be very prepared to help families so that they are okay. And because one of the things that usually happens is that families really get scared again that people are talking like this. They're having a hard enough time taking care of this dying loved one in their home, that now they're telling them that, their grandmother's there, they can't handle this. They want them to stop. It's letting you know that this person is getting very close to dying, but it's also, there's so much more there. Really observe how your patient is doing. Let them share with you, and never shut it down. Never have family say, Mom, no, stop it. You're not seeing that. That's not fair. So we just want to be open. Oh, the angelic figures too. So more common, I've had people talk about the past loved ones, but I have had a few angelic figures, and boy, does that sound pretty incredible. So you never know what is going to come about, but a lot of times, again, it is past loved ones. And it's, gosh, I'm thinking of, I got an email not too long ago from a woman who took the course, and she was talking about her and her sister being there for her father. And she said her father just, I think he was like a forest ranger, and it sounded really beautiful. And he had a group of friends that he was always so close with and everything. And she said that her and her sister were caring for him, and he would, he was shaking people's hands. He had his hand and he had this huge smile. She said he had the most beautiful smile ever, like just as a person. And he'd be smiling and shaking hands and hands and hands, and they couldn't see anyone, and they were just having such a great time at seeing him so happy, so at peace with his experience. So it's quite beautiful. Okay, they become incontinent. Okay, so they lose control of their bowel and bladder. This is obviously very embarrassing to people. It also needs to be handled. People need to be caring for and changing, cleaning. This is not the doula's role unless this is something that you want to put in your scope of practice of things that you do, but you are not there to be a home health aide. You are there to be a guide with the family. You're there to remind families about checking people to see if they need to be cleaned. You know, oftentimes at the end, people haven't been eating. They're in a deep sleep state, so people assume they don't need to be clean. They're not eating anything. That's not true. The body is still eliminating. People are so frightened that they really don't know what to do, so they sort of just, sometimes it's hands off. Sometimes they just, you know, don't, like, are watching because they're petrified and don't really do anything. People need to be turned in position. They need to be checked if they're clean. And this is something, again, the doula will remind the family that this is so important, and also to be putting it on a schedule because people will forget when the last time is or who's doing it. So reinforcing, again, the teaching of hospice, but being incontinent, especially when your patient is still awake, is really embarrassing. So we want to make it no big deal. There are, you know, like depends type of things, and you know, chucks and diapers that families can use. And here's the thing that I would say is that it's very, very important to talk with your patient. This is a great rule of thumb, period. So when your patient goes into their deep sleep state, we want them to feel as loved, protected, safe, and secure as possible. You want to ask them, who would you like? Who are you comfortable with, and who would you want to do your changing of your clothes and to bathe you when it needs to be done? You know, and again, you're not going to have the person, and this has happened. Usually the hospital bed is in a central location where all the people can be around the person. If the person is in a sleep state, people, and again, I feel like people are just checked out. People have thought, no big deal. We'll just change grandma. You know, everyone's sitting here, but it doesn't matter. Grandma's in a deep sleep state. And here she is, you know, with no clothes on, getting turned and changed. And you have people in the room. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Doula Giver 101 is that you would never say or do anything in front of a patient that is asleep that you wouldn't say or do in front of them when they are awake. So that's just a really good rule of thumb. So we asked them, who are you most comfortable? Maybe they said, well, I want you to be here, but you know, my daughter and my granddaughter can help or whatever, but I don't want my husband, or I don't want my son doing it. And we really want to have that be the way it is, because it's so important for people to be able to trust and go into that, let go and go into that deep sleep. And so, and again, you have to follow through with everything you say you're going to do. You have to follow through. You know, I've had people with, we talked about pets last week. I've had people with spouses, you know, like there was this one woman and they had 4 children. And of course, 2 were arguing one way and 2 were arguing another way, what was going to happen to the mother when the father died. And he had taken care of the woman for, you know, their years together. And he wanted her, she wanted to stay in the house, and he wanted her to stay in the house. And 2 of them were like, nope, as soon as dad dies, she's out of here. She's in a nursing home and we're selling the house. Well, you know, a whole bunch of family history there, no judgment. And it was super uncomfortable. So you have to, if there is something going on, again, you can't tell somebody that, yeah, sure, mom will stay home, and then, you know, have it be where they had no intention of having, because guess what, the people know anyway. So that's going very deep. But anything you say that you're going to do and the family's going to do, we need to follow through. That's just the way ethically and morally things are. And this becoming incontinent really should not be made a big deal out of. It really, you know, is at the very end usually, and you want it to be set up in the best way for comfort and dignity for that patient. Confusions, hallucinations, are they really, or I mean, these are things that are telltale, that are written all about. Are they really, or are they seeing the loved ones? Is that a reality? I 100% believe it's a reality. If you're going to have a hallucination, you usually will have that as a side effect to a medication, and that will usually happen within the hour after taking a medication. So again, you can note that it doesn't happen that often, but some medications like anti-anxieties can do that. So if somebody is having an issue, then you want to say, well, what did they take and when did they take it? So you can, of course, report that to the hospice team and nurse. Confusion, when they're in that sleep state most of the time and then waking up, there can be a little like, where am, like, I gotta go on the trip. Not a big deal. But again, I think this is more really to the fact that they see things that we're not able to see in our 3D. And I believe their energy is changing. They have one foot in this world, one foot in the other, and they get a glimpse. They kind of go back and forth before they leave fully. 100% believe in what I say because I've seen it. They've talked to me about it, and it has been incredible. So just really want you to be aware of it so you can be the best practitioner. Surge of energy. So this is a phenomenon that happens. It does not happen for everyone. So I just want to, again, really reiterate the fact that not everyone is going to show every one of these steps or stages. I want you to know about them, and I also want you to really be looking for these indications that somebody might be headed into a transition phase, so we can be ahead of it. But the surge of energy is something that I found out on the job. So I don't want you to find out on the job because it can catch you by surprise. So it's something that happens. Somebody's been in that sleep state or like mostly sleeping most of the time, and all of a sudden they wake up. They have their clear as a bell. Their mind is clear. They usually wake up and they want something to eat or drink. And, most people are like, if they don't know what's happening, they think all that praying, it's a miracle. She's better because they are so much different. They are so clear. They might have had, memory issues or something for whatever, and they're as clear as a bell. And so it's really a gift. It's this amazing window of opportunity to just have this last period of time with your loved one. It usually lasts a few hours. So you want to maximize it. You want to be on top of it. You don't want family to think that it's a miracle that she's better. And I don't tell families about this ahead of time because then they're going to be expecting it, and not everyone gets it. So for me, if somebody was thinking, okay, the doula told me about the surge of energy, mom's sleeping all the time, but she's going to wake up, we're going to be able to have this great conversation, and she doesn't, and she dies, I'm going to be super upset. So you don't ever want to, again, say this before it happens, but when it happens, you want to be able to explain what it is, and always, it's a gift. Sit with your mom, tell her anything that you want to tell her, have this, and usually it's going to be an exchange. And if anyone else can get there, I always try and have, if, other people can join in on that, if they should, your sister who lives next town over, if she can, come on over for this beautiful window of opportunity, that's great. But that's exactly what it is. And people die shortly after that. They usually go into that deep sleep and die after that. Okay, giving loved ones permission to go. This is so important. So we're going to talk a lot about what happens at the end of life and the phenomenon that a lot of times patients can control. I don't know how, there's something else going on, but they can control the exact time that they leave, that they die. Now, you've probably heard that people will wait for other people to come. People will wait for an occasion, a graduation, a birthday, a birth of a baby, an anniversary, someone to come to the bedside, and people will wait for you to leave. And this is the one I think that baffles everyone, is that now people have been, I have to really share with you, like, let me paint this picture. People are in a sleep state. They have had their eyes closed. They have not been eating, talking. They're in a sleep coma for days. People are at the bedside. You're hanging there, you're waiting, you're sitting there 24/7, in that room with your mom. The 5 minutes that you go to get a cup of coffee, the 5 minutes out of all that time that you have decided to go get a cup of coffee or go take a quick shower, that patient dies. And when you come back to that room and you found that your patient dies, or your loved one, your mom, whatever, What do you think happens? It's a total meltdown. I can't believe I missed it. I can't believe I wasn't here for you. This is terrible. I was supposed to be here for her. It was all meant to be. Um, this is what I feel is really happening, is that the person does not want this to be the last moment you remember of them. And end of life is memorized. It's like a videotape in our minds, all of it, whether it goes well or whether it doesn't go well. Everything is remembered cellularly, okay, because it has that big of an impact on what we are going through. This is hard on everyone. Saying goodbye to that physical person is so hard for us, especially right now when we're completely backwards in a society about death. Your mom, your dad, they don't want to make it harder. They don't want to die in front of you and have that be what you're thinking about, those last moments, the breathing, because you know what? Most people are not able to really handle that. So they wait for you to walk away. Now, how did they know? How do they know with their eyes closed, not speaking, in a sleeping coma, that you walked out of the room for 5 days, for 5 minutes? And I have to tell you, this happens all of the time. And it is just incredible. So for me, I'm saying, wow, what bigger picture is going on here, and how incredible that bigger picture is, and how beautiful of a gift that you don't want that to be the last memory that your daughter has. However, we've got to share this information, because to me it gives me a whole new outlook on what's really happening here, that this life thing might be a very small piece to all of this, because how does she know that we just walked out? So for me, it's a couple of things, but one of the most important things is you don't want your family is riddled in guilt, which they are, because they missed it, they blew it, I can't believe I missed it. That's all they keep saying, and everything. So when you share with them, they're like, wow. Now the other side of that is that when people won't die, or hanging on, oftentimes I will first I look for something that they're waiting for. Are they waiting for someone to come? Are they waiting for something to be resolved in the family? Is there anyone fighting? Is there anyone in the family that's really not doing well with this end of life coming about? We need to stabilize, because they don't want to leave, because it's going to kick it over even more, and they know that. So they wait, they hang on for things to be of the right energy that they can go. And then I also say to people, step away from the bed for a bit. Go ahead and go in another room. They don't want to pass in front of you. That's so common. So a couple of months ago, I had a text late night from a family member who was with their grandfather, and said, we're here, we're with my grandfather, everyone's here, and he's been in a sleep coma for days, and he's been getting lots of morphine, not awake, and he won't die. And she said, how much morphine can he take? And so, I texted back. I said, well, does he seem like he's in pain? No. I said, okay, so that's, not something. I mean, I said, you could always call the hospice nurse and get her back. But the first thing is, let's talk about, is he in pain? What is the morphine for? And so, no, he doesn't seem uncomfortable. Okay, so, take that off the table. And I said, is he waiting for anyone? She said, no, we're all here. We're all here. We've been here for days. And it's like, we're all just standing around his bed, and he won't go, he won't die. So what's going on? I said, okay, what about if you all stepped away from the bed? I said, there's a lot of times they don't want to, and especially if there's a whole bunch of people, and it's a big thing. Even if it's one person, give them that private space. And she said, okay. She said, so it was really sweet what they did. It was late at night, so it was like 12 or so. They all got like blankets and things and went in the living room. So they all made like camped out, she said. And she said that, within a couple of hours he passed, and she said it was so incredibly serene and beautiful, like a light snow was coming down outside, and it just felt so great, and we were just loving him and giving him that moment. And she said, and it worked. So they were just, again, so grateful. And that's the other thing that I really want to share is that, and I'm going to do a section on this, your doula, your certified end-of-life doula training, and your when we build your practice, please understand that there is an opportunity to be a coach and a doula via phone and doing it by the internet, whether it's a Zoom call. I like to do Zoom where people can see me. You can be coaching people and have a business strictly from the comfort of your own home. And I'm going to do a whole section on how to do that. I have coached many people by this way, and it allows you to reach a geographically large audience, and it works really well. So there aren't doulas everywhere, and that's really another wonderful option. So this was just beautiful. They wrote back just, I mean, I can read it verbatim. It was just incredibly powerful. And again, people don't know that these things exist. So one of the things about giving permission to the loved one to go is to really say, Mom, it's okay. Thank you. I love you, and you can go. Now, the point of that is that you have to mean everything you say, because they know the difference between you telling the truth about that and not. So you can't just say, you know, you're a wreck and you say, Mom, you can go. I mean, she knows that you don't mean it. So what we need to do again is get to the bottom of, if somebody is having a very difficult time with this, we want to work with our family members a little bit more individually. Now let's use the instance that there's one family member who might be having just, again, a really, really difficult time, maybe some psych issues or whatever, like not like emotional, or they maybe have a history of some mental illness or whatnot. They're not going to get it together within, you know, the next 2 days. So you all have to make sure that you acknowledge that to your mom and say, I know that Becky's, you know, she's not doing well. She's really having a hard time with this, and we're going to take care of her. We've got her, Mom. You can go. We love you so much. It's okay. That's all they need to know. It's amazing how fast people go with that. Okay, so you're always going to ask the 3 questions on every visit in every case, including transition phase. Are there any safety issues? Are there any acute issues? And what support system is available at the end of life, at the very end of life? Turning, positioning, it is really hard. People are like that dead weight. So you have one person doing it is almost impossible. Never want to see that happen. And a lot of times you'll have an older person being left to care for somebody at end of life, which is, to me, just unacceptable. 2 extra questions when you're in the stabilization phase are, how can I help this person find the meaning to their life? And how can I help this person find closure and forgiveness? So let's do a case study related to the transition phase. So case study number 1, you have an 80-year-old man with a diagnosis of terminal cancer. He has been home on hospice care for 7 weeks. On this visit, his family tells you that he has declined anything to eat for the last 2 meals and that he is sleeping most of the time. What might you say to the family about this? On your visit the next day, his daughter tells you that her father was talking to someone in the room that she could not see. When the daughter asked her father who he's speaking to, he replied, "My mother, can't you see her?" Because they see people as clear as day. So what can you tell the daughter about this? What phase of care is this man in? How long will it most likely last? And what is the main role of the end-of-life doula in this phase? So again, let's go back. We're dealing strictly with transition phase. So on this one, we want to go ahead and say, what might you say to the family about this finding? So this is specifically dealing with the decline and refusal, not wanting to eat. And maybe they can't. And the one way that you tell that somebody cannot swallow properly or is having trouble is because they're playing with the food in their mouth. That it's going back and forth and they're just moving up and down. And you know, again, you're like, that doesn't seem right. And then if your patient is cognitively alert and able to talk with you, you know, you ask them, are you having trouble swallowing? I'm here to support you and love you and keep you safe. And, you know, this is part of it. So you want to know that. So what you want to tell the family about this is that that is a natural part of the end of life process, and talk about what that means. Now, I like to talk about things before we get there. especially things that will evoke fear and panic and all of that. And this transition phase, we're there, and I don't know, no matter how much we think we're ready, 100%, we're never 100% ready for that person to leave us. So hopefully in the stabilization phase, you have done some teaching about what we can expect to see in the future, and also formulate a care plan for that. Who needs to be there? What does that look like? All of that, giving back control to the patient and their family. So you're going to explain about that the body is not absorbing the nutrients, doesn't need them, and shuts off the reflex. And so we want to make sure that we offer small meals, or, if she doesn't want it, that's fine. And also safety for swallowing. Okay, so the next day, her daughter asked the father, "Who are you speaking to?" And he replied, "My mother, can't you see her?" Because they see them so clearly. And so you don't want the daughter to say, "Dad, stop it. You're not, no one's there. Stop saying that." So we want to, again, talk about that is a natural part. And go back to, even though we're not seeing them, what gives us the right to say that they're not? And when you have this experience, you will believe 100% that they are seeing what they are seeing. What can you tell the daughter about this? So you're going to explain to her about that. I think no matter what, whether it's real or not, the fact that it brings such peace and comfort to someone is all I care about. And I have to tell you something, the way that the family, when they see their loved ones so serene, content, almost excited, is such a gift to that family, because they are like, wow, Mom was so happy before she left from that experience. What phase of care is this man in? He's in the transition phase. How long will it most likely last? Hours to days. So usually somebody who starts to go into their transition with those two indicators, it usually then will last, the transition period will last from hours to days. You will make sure that they are kept safe, that you offer, ice chips or mouth swabs and lubricant. And then they usually go into that sleeping coma, and the sleeping coma lasts hours to days, and then the person dies. That's textbook. That's the usual way. I have been outsmarted many a time. So I thought that there are people that were doing great, that were going to be with us for a while, gone. I've had people who defied science, what science says how long they can last without food or water, 2 of them, with my own eyes, caring for them, that the medical books say that's not possible. And we'll talk all about that. So this is the usual way that it happens. But again, there's a higher power that's at work. And so we want to just obviously be open to the journey being theirs and how it's going to go. We do everything on our part to make it as positive as possible. What is the main role of the end-of-life doula in this phase? So the end-of-life doula in the transition phase is to make sure that patient is kept safe, dignified, pain-free, all of those wonderful things. However, I turn a great deal of my focus on the loved ones, because it's happening. This person is going to die. And again, no matter how much we have known that we have an end-of-life process, I don't think we're ever 100% ready. And you're going to be caring for all of the loved ones. So you might have 5 people all having 5 different experiences. So it can get to be a lot. Case study number 2, the transition phase. So we have a 92-year-old female patient with a terminal diagnosis of failure to thrive. That simply means old age. On Wednesday, you make a visit, and the daughter of the patient tells you that ever since last night, the patient has been saying that she needs to pack. The patient keeps saying that she is going home. The daughter of the patient tells you that the patient tried to get out of bed, saying that she needs to pack for her trip. The patient is unable to stand. What do you know about the transition phase to share with the family to help them? So what we know, yet again, is that this is a common thing that people will talk about, and we always have to be on top of those safety issues. We can't negotiate. So again, can we try and talk to the mother about, what can I do to help you get ready for your trip? Well, I need to pack. Okay, let me get the bag for you. What would you like in the bag? Here are your shoes. I have a great story. I wonder if I should tell it today. Just trying to see, or next week, probably next week in the transition, about this whole getting ready type thing. So you have that bag. You say, here's your bag. It's right here, right beside you. And again, this usually will suffice to calm people down um, with that anxiety or that irritability. I mean, anxiousness that they want to get going. And the other thing is, just letting people know that that is a telltale that we're getting close. So we want to make sure that they know that that person is going to be leaving us soon. It's an indication. So question number 2, what can you tell the daughter about what she's experiencing? So that again is teaching her that that's a common indication that people are getting ready to leave us. And that home is really that bigger home, that picture of that bigger home. And it's very common that people will talk about this in all different countries and religions. It's really interesting about that phrase. What interventions might you suggest to the daughter? So safety has to be the utmost. And again, I mean, if people want to go right to medication, I mean, they have that choice, and hospice will have those medications. I have found that when they have this agitation, it doesn't always really help the medication. Gosh, they really, it's like having a bee in your bonnet. They have that, I have to pack, I'm going, and sometimes the meds can just kind of like clouded and even sometimes make it a little bit even more challenging on a different level. So I'd really just like to see them supported in what's happening and helping her mother to pack and get ready. Of course, we will never have anyone jeopardizing safety. So hospice should be alerted if there's any complication that they need more help. And reminding her mother that this is an indication that her mom will be leaving us very soon. What are the safety concerns? Obviously that she's going to fall getting up, and we can avoid that. And we have to. Being on top of this and being on top of what the nuances of changes in your patient you can prevent any falls or all these safety issues. Sitting with a patient, seeing them have their lunch or eating their ice cream and knowing that there's a difference there. What is that? I'm not quite sure what's happening, but there's a difference. Something is off. And then being on top of it, knowing that they're going to lose their swallowing ability. So these things are going to happen. That swallowing is going to be an issue at some point, and that standing and walking is going to be an issue. 2 major safety issues. You have to be looking for them on every visit. Just be aware of, are there any subtleties that are indicating that that's happening, so we can be ahead of it so nothing happens to this person. All right, transition phase review. So this is it. This is where we are. We're here. The baby is coming. The person is going to be dying. It can be, again, it can catch people off guard when you have such a high quality stabilization phase. So in your working with your families, I want you in that stabilization phase to always keep one foot, one toe in the reality of that you have an end of life process. Sprinkle that phase with some teaching because they can handle it. They're probably happier to see their mom doing so well than they've ever been. So get a cup of tea, brownies or whatever it is, talk in the kitchen and say, let's talk about what you might be seeing and what you want to look for as natural stages in the end of life process, so that when they get there, when mom says, I'm not hungry for 2 meals in a row, that they don't freak out, that they do say, wait a minute, I remember Suzanne talking about that. This is a natural part of, we might be at the transition phase. Let me let them know, let me have the hospice nurse know. It really softens the intensity of the whole end of life. And so that's what we want to do. We want to kind of do a role play before we get there, so it's not as intense in the first time. The transition phase is the period of time right before that person dies. It's transition from this world to the next. This can last anywhere from hours to days. As the doula, you should be aware of the way that the body physically shuts down. Systematically, we all die the same way. So the disease process that someone has will impact their care and journey up until the very end of the end of life. So, obviously if you have lung issues, you're going to have breathing issues, you're going to have impacts on that. And, other diseases just will have different care plans that will be, and again, we'll do that in level 2, very specific for the comfort of that individual based on their disease process. At the very end, as the body's shutting down, no matter what disease process you have, the body tends to shut down systematically in the same way, which is really beautiful, that we're all the same and that we all can be there and learn what that looks like. So it's very important for the doula to know every step and stage that someone will go through, even though people might not have every step and stage in their end of life process. It's best practice to be familiar with all so you can make suggestions for comfort or simply let the family know that something they are seeing is a natural part of the dying process and not to be afraid. Why is this important? The transition phase may be the most stressful period of care due to the quick changes that the body goes through as it starts to shut down. It's during this phase that the patient will go into a deep sleep as the body eventually dies. There are several changes to be aware of so that you can offer suggestions for comfort or again, simply reassure the family that what is happening is a natural part of the dying process. This knowledge alone can be extremely comforting. Okay, thank you so much for being part of today's class. It's intense. You know, there's no way around it that this is not hard, but it can be beautiful and it can go well. And I feel like there are elements that we can put together that will increase the ability to have it go well by such a large amount that we have to put those into place. And this is what we're doing. The end of life doula profession, learning these skills to support patient and family with being home and also having the best end of life experience possible. So thank you again for being part of the third class in the certified end of life doula training. We will now go ahead and do
Welcome back. Welcome back. That was so good. Can you guys hear me okay? Okay. Sorry, it's raining here. My internet is a little, um, hopefully you can hear me okay. Oh my gosh, that was really good. I've watched this twice today and it just takes me back, to my own personal experiences and kind of the excitement that I feel for all of you because I know exactly the training that we are receiving is really setting you up for success and helping you to prepare and walk all of those families and your clients walk through this phase of life, this journey that we're all going to take. So, congratulations for completing Module 3. Congratulations. We're going to go ahead and open up the chat for some Q&A. So, if you're a little shy, let's see. Heather says, "I don't see you, but I hear you." Okay, thank you, Heather. Um, So we'll open up the chat for questions and answers. You can do hashtag question with your question, or we can have you raise your digital hand. And so just to remind you, down at the bottom of your screen is the raise hand. I'll raise my hand here so that you can see. That way that'll help me find you a little easier. Also, I wanted to go over the assignment, the homework for you. Again, just to remind you that the homework is not something that you have to turn in at all. This is more of a reflective exercise again for you. Again, you don't have to turn this in. You don't have to share this with the group at all. If you'd like to, we would love some insights that you've had in this process. But for Module 3, Assignment 3, so in your module workbook, which you will find in the classroom under Module 3, you'll see the homework, the transition phase part 1. So part of your homework this week will be in the back of that workbook. You're going to take some time, grab a nice cup of tea, and please write a letter to someone that you would like to ask forgiveness from. That's going to take some time. I know for me that process was not a one and done process. And sometimes just getting that down on paper can really be healing. And again, you don't have to share it with anyone at all. It's just a letter that you can write to someone that you would like to ask forgiveness from. And you may want to send that letter to that person. I'd encourage you to do that if that feels right for you. The second letter is to someone that you want to give your forgiveness to. And I think that is also another powerful exercise. So I hope that maybe you will consider working on that. Um, I think that as we go along, this will only help to um, um, increase our ability to have compassion and empathy for those who perhaps haven't had the opportunity to do this forgiveness work for themselves when they reach their end of life. So we're so lucky to be able to have this opportunity to do this for ourselves. So that's your homework. I have one little other house cleaning thing I'm so excited to share. Doula Givers has offered on Fridays, just to remind you, Tuesdays, actually, Erica has been doing the tech support. So don't forget to check in with Erica for tech support if you're having difficulties navigating the the classroom, or if you're having a hard time finding anything. Erica is like the tech guru. She does tech support on Tuesdays from 2 to 3 Eastern Standard Time on Tuesdays, 2 to 3. And then office hours with me on Fridays. And last week was so fun. There were so many of you that came. And that's Fridays, 11 to 12 Eastern Standard Time. So be sure and join. You can just pop in. We'll be sure and post the link in the Facebook group. But I wanted to say that Suzanne and Doula Givers has offered us some additional time to meet with people in the group. So all of your Doula Giver brothers and sisters. So on Friday, after the office hour from 11 to 12, so it'll be 12 to 12:30, we're going to have happy hour. Well, it's happy half hour right now. So what I want you to do is maybe just pop in. We're going to break out in breakout rooms so that you can meet one another, get to know one another, and really, I think this will really help to support those who may not be on Facebook as much. I think it's a really great place for people to just get to know each other. So we'll spend 30 minutes just getting to know one another in the happy hour. So that's Friday. So let's go to the questions. Anyone, if you have any questions, raise your digital hand, and then I'm going to go to the chat. So let's see. Nadine is so helpful. She's posting questions for me. So first question is from Ray. Can pain be resolved in ways other than medication? Absolutely, absolutely. So pain is challenging, especially remember, well, I don't know if we're quite there yet, but in when someone is having pain, we really want to help people to not go past 3 or 4 on a pain scale. And so when someone is having pain, we can, of course, direct or guide people to use the medications, but hopefully that won't be our first course of action. There are many ways. Sometimes it can be just someone being uncomfortable. I think about a woman I had taken care of recently who had a catheter, and she was complaining of so much pain, and her little catheter tubing was kinked. And so, really, just helping to help the caregiver to reposition. We won't be doing the repositioning, but maybe being mindful if there's any wrinkles underneath the person, or if there's tubing that's kinked, or if the pillow feels uncomfortable under their head. I remember one gentleman had a sore that developed on his ear from just being in the same position for so long. So we really want to be kind of a investigator and seeing if there are things that may be causing pain first and foremost. I'm a big fan of complementary therapies, and so massage and Reiki and acupuncture, those can really be helpful in helping to reduce pain. Of course, if their pain level does increase, then of course pain medications are a solution. But really looking outside of the box and maybe seeing if there's something that might be causing the pain. Repositioning in the bed can be really beneficial. Raising the head of the bed, lowering it. So that's great, Ray. That's a great question. Darlene says, um, is drooling common at the end of life process? It can be. There is something called terminal secretions that can happen. Ideally, when people are entering their final stages in that transitional phase, remember what Suzanne was talking about, the body just naturally starts to not want to have food and water. They're going to be having a less desire to drink food and water. And so really ideally we do like to have people be a little on the dehydrated side, because if someone is has an extra amount of fluid in their bodies, then something can happen called terminal secretions. And that is when the congestion or secretions begin to get trapped oftentimes, or what happens when people near the end of life, the swallowing reflex stops. And so for us, we're able to just swallow naturally. If we have congestion, nasal congestion, or throat congestion, we can just swallow that down easily. But as people as they enter their transitional phase, that natural swallowing reflex will stop. And so there is some secretions or congestion that can happen. And so terminal secretions is something where someone, I don't like this term, but it's commonly termed as the death rattle. And it's not uncomfortable for the person having their end of life experience. It seems to be a bit uncomfortable for us as we hear it. So, really repositioning the person, and we can talk more about that, helping to reposition a person from side to side will help alleviate those secretions, and then the secretions will just go down their throat. So drooling can happen. And I remember a lovely woman when I was taking care of her husband, she was like, can you get his mouth to close? Because his mouth was open. And I thought, oh gosh, he's finally comfortable. He had been in so much pain, and he was just hanging on and hanging on. And finally, he got to the sweet spot where his body was completely relaxed and his jaw dropped open. And she was uncomfortable with that, seeing that. But the body will do what it needs to do. All of these things, the body will make some some noises, sounds, and that's totally normal in the dying process. Drooling can happen. Sometimes those excessive secretions, um, it's there are some drying agents that can help. Not my favorite to use, but sometimes it does happen. So just keeping a towel and blotting that will be helpful, and also helping to reposition the person will be super helpful for that. Um, let's see. I'm gonna keep. I don't see any hands raised, so feel free to raise your hands. Let's see. Oh gosh, this is a beautiful name, Latidia. I hope I said that right. So, regarding the hallucinations and dreams that are upsetting the loved one dying and the family, when informed the loved one who was the best way to support both, regarding the hallucinations and or dreams that are upsetting the loved one dying and the family when informed by the loved one, what is the best way to support both? So it's really hard, but also remember that reminding them that this is the natural part of the dying process, and we can't we don't know exactly what our patient or our client is seeing and feeling at that time, and so really just being a comfort to the family members, I think, will be super supportive for them. I remember an instance where a gentleman was just moaning and moaning and moaning, and we had given him so much pain medication that He really should have had his end of life experience sooner. And I realized at that point that was spiritual suffering. He just, in my mind, had perhaps many, many, many loose ends that he needed to tie that he hadn't been able to tie up. And so, really being able to make sure that he's comfortable, that there is no making sure that he's comfortable and that all of his pain uh, is minimized as much as I could. But for people that are reaching out and saying that they see things, we really have to just be able to comfort the loved ones. At that point, the person is on their journey, and allowing that person to have their experience will be so beneficial to tell them to not be afraid. The hallucinations won't last long, but um, it can be uncomfortable for people to observe. This is called terminal agitation, and there are medications that can be supportive. And we'll go more into the medications. So it's really hard, but really being able to support the family that this is a natural process. It takes a lot of work to get out of this body, and I have to refer to this a lot about being labor. This to me is very similar from the beginning of life. It's very similar to the end of life, and we labor coming into this world, and sometimes we oftentimes labor going out, and so there is this restlessness and this agitation that happens. It's the normal process of the dying process. So hopefully that answered your question, beautiful Letitia. Um, Mara, I see your hand raised. Go right ahead, my dear.
I think I'm muted. Oh, there you go. Thank you.
You're
Um,
welcome.
so if you are wanting, a lot of times I've found, and perhaps I'm over taking care of a person, is just to help do a light cleaning of them, bathing, moving them, repositioning them. Is there a certain training or certification I need to go through so that there's not a liability, that there'd be a liability factor on myself? Or what do people
Yeah.
who, yeah,
So we have to be very clear in our role as a doula giver, as a certified end of life doula. We do not provide physical care for folks at the end of life. We do not administer medications. Those are just a hard stop for us to be mindful, because it can be quite a slippery slope. There are people
yeah,
that are certified nurses assistants. There are paid caregivers that are doula givers that have incorporated their practice. They have incorporated those practices together. And so, if that's something that you're interested in doing, you're certainly able to do that. That is not something that we offer in this training, but there are many doula givers that are practicing as caregivers. We just have to be we have to be very clear for ourselves and for liability reasons. If we're acting as a doula, then we are
mm,
not providing hands-on care. If we're practicing as a caregiver, then those roles will be clearly defined. So, and making sure that we have
okay,
insurance. We'll go over all of that later too. But that's a great question.
okay,
Yeah.
great, thank you. Yes,
You're,
thank you,
you're welcome.
Kristen.
You're welcome. Good to see you.
Yes.
I'm gonna go ahead and if anyone else has any questions, please be sure and raise your digital hand. Let's see. Anne says, I had a patient who was in their transition stage and was hallucinating and describing something scary. Am interesting in different ways to respond to the situation. Thank you. And you know, I just take a breath because those situations can be very uncomfortable. I reflect of the I was a hospice nurse for a while, and the someone had said that their family member was passing away, and just one of his siblings had his pillow over his head because there was just a lot going on and overwhelming. But we have to be mindful that
like we're the professionals, we're the person who has to remain calm. And I know many instances I will remove that family caregiver from the room and just sit down with them and have a cup of tea and just reinforce the teaching that you're receiving, that this is a natural process of the end of life experiences. This is a natural process of an end of life experience. And sometimes there's this restlessness, this agitation, these hallucinations. Again, we can't minimize the person is having their experience, and if they are having uh, times where they're fearful, then I would probably call a hospice nurse and say there is some fear, that maybe some medications can be encouraged, but really just allowing the caregiver to step away and being very clear on safety, because when a person does become restless and agitated, they might think that they can get out of bed, and we do not want to um, uh, uh, have the person fall. So just being really mindful about that. We have to I know for me, it's taken a lot of practice to just take a breath and just remind that, again, this is just the laboring process. And fortunately, in my experience, I have not seen that many experiences, but I do know that it happens. So just being that calming presence, this is normal, and we'll be able to support them through that process. Yeah, thank you. That's a great question. Rhonda, I see your hand up. Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, good to see you.
Okay. Thank you. Good to see you and everybody else on here. I kind of have a question, and I really don't know how to ask it, but it has to do with the homework and that second letter of what was it? Something you want to give your forgiveness to.
Yeah, let me
Do you normally have? Do you? I don't know how to say it. Like if you were to write something like that, would you make another person feel bad? Do you understand what I'm trying to say? Because they may not realize this has been something that has bothered you either over the years or whatever time frame. So I just kind of wanted to get your input on that, and if that helps people in some way, if we send those, or I don't know. I just kind of think it's kind of in this little catch-22 area for that one.
Oh, it's a great question. I think that each person will have to decide for themselves what feels right for them. And you're right. Some things that we've done, maybe I know I've apologized to my son about something that I did years ago, and he's like, "Mom, I don't even remember that." And so, but I have to tell you that it's been rumbling around in my head. It was just rumbling around, and it just kept bubbling up and kept bubbling up. And I really needed to just release that. And it wasn't anything terrible, but it was just something that just kept coming up. And what I've noticed in my experience is that as we get closer to our end of life experience, all of those things bubble up to the surface. Um, and so, if it's something that you're hanging on to and you need to just release it, just get it down on paper. I always ask I ask the universe for a window of opportunity. It may not be the right time, but just getting it out on paper, whether or not you send it, you don't have to. You certainly do not have to mail any of these letters. Forgiveness is not necessarily for the other person, it's for ourselves. And so, really, just being mindful about your intention and your motive of how is this could this potentially harm this other person. We don't want to do that, but really allowing yourself to go through the process. If there is something that just keeps gnawing in the back of your head, like maybe I need to work on this a little bit, and then just release it. You know, I write letters a lot. Sometimes I don't want to, you know, I avoid confrontation at all costs, and so I'll just kind of not say anything. But I do a ton of journaling now, and sometimes I'll write letters and then I just burned them. And actually, I had some unresolved issues with my mother who had passed away several years ago, and I wasn't able to tell her these things. And so I called it a dead letter. And so I wrote a letter to her. There were tons of tear stains on the paper, and then I just burned it. You know, I think that there is something very healing about honoring the process and again, I'll leave it up to you guys if you feel like you would want to. You certainly don't have to. This can just be your own personal letter to yourself, asking for forgiveness and then also offering forgiveness for someone else. So, great question. Yeah, it's deeply personal and it does not have to be shared at all.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome. We are nearing the end of time. I'll ask. Let's see. Let's see. There are so many questions. I'm so sorry. So there is lots of questions that I will get to with the. I'll do a Q&A. I'll take a little snapshot and then I'll answer all of your questions in the group. So how was tonight? How was that? It was good, wasn't it? Yeah, it was so good. It was so good. Suzanne does such a great job. I can listen to her every day and I learn something new every single time. We're going to repost this replay video in the group as well as answering the questions and answers. Does anyone have any one last question? Again, you don't have to turn your homework in. Please be sure and check in. If you haven't introduced yourself in the group, please introduce yourself in the group. Also, I really would love for you guys to maybe think about posting some aha moments and just let us know how you're doing. This is deeply personal work. That you guys are going to do amazing. This program is an amazing program that is going to set you up to be an incredible doula giver out in your community, helping your loved ones and yourself as we prepare for our own journey. So if there's not any other questions, let's see, don't forget to come and check with us on Friday if that feels right for you and do the happy hour at least. So that'll be 11:30. No, 12, it'll be 12:30. So I'm so proud of you guys. Good job tonight. You did excellent. And those were some great questions. I love supporting you in the group. And I am so excited that you're here. I hope you have a great week. I'm sending you all sorts of hugs from Boise. And I hope you guys have a great night. Okay, thanks so much. Bye, you guys.